If you feel lousy or low in energy or anemic, sometimes are depressed and don't know why, or if you have diarrhea, gas and bloating, joint pain, or headaches, you'll want to listen to the show today because it could have something to do with eating pasta, bread, cereal, and crackers made from wheat, rye, and barley, all of which contain gluten. You may be gluten intolerant or have a gluten allergy. The National Institutes of Health, the NIH, estimates that roughly 2 million people are suffering from gluten intolerance in the U.S. alone. And some estimate that as many as 30 million Americans suffer from subclinical gluten intolerance. So there's a possibility that you or someone you know is affected by this. I heard that Chelsea Clinton had a gluten-free wedding cake at her wedding. So I'm not sure if she's gluten intolerant or her new husband. Maybe my next guest will know. But from my perspective, I try and stay clear of gluten. But it's challenging, and to give up that crusty loaf of bread. So my guest today is Leslie Cerier, and she's the Organic Gourmet, and she's a national authority on gluten-free cooking and baking, and is the author of several cookbooks, including Gluten-Free Recipes for the Conscious Cook and Going Wild in the Kitchen. Leslie is a chef, caterer, teacher, recipe developer with over 20 years' experience in whole foods and organic cuisine. Welcome to your supernatural life, Leslie.
Thank you, Beth. It's a delight to be here. And yes, from what I've read, Chelsea is gluten-free.
Aha. Okay. Well, so tell us what does it mean to be gluten-free?
What it means to be gluten-free is that you're not going to be eating any of the gluten-free grains, which includes wheat, rye, and barley.
The gluten grains.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
You're not going to eat, and that's all the wheat family as well, like spelt and kamut and farina and bulgur and couscous. But actually, that leaves more grains that you can eat. So it's actually not. You're not going to be deprived being on a gluten-free diet.
So there are lots of grains that are gluten-free?
At least 10. And
Wow.
then if you count rice as one, there's probably maybe even 10 varieties of rice.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there is, would you like to know which grains are gluten-free?
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'm sure our listeners would like to know as well.
Yeah, gluten-free grains include amaranth and buckwheat and corn and millet and quinoa and rice and sorghum and teff and wild rice and oats.
Uh-huh.
And in the rice family, I mean, we've got, right now, thanks to Lotus Foods, we've got jade pearl rice and Bhutanese red rice and basmati rice and jade rice, Madagascan pink rice. I mean, then there's like short, medium, long brown rice.
And they all
they
all have different flavors too.
They all have different flavors, and the other nice thing about the gluten-free grains is they also have different colors. Like millet's yellow, and you've got some corns that are red and blue, and teff is brown and ivory, and you've got quinoa in red, black, and tan. So you can start thinking about being an artist, too. The different colors of grains. They could be neutral backdrops, as well as they could be the star of the dish, for sure.
That's interesting. Interesting way of looking at things, to be an artist with your food, your preparation. So now some of these grains are quick cooking, aren't they? They don't take more than 15 minutes, right?
Exactly. So not only are they going to enhance your health and vitality, they're not going to ruin your day in the kitchen. Gluten-free grains like buckwheat groats, also known as kasha when it's toasted, that's about 10-15 minutes. Quinoa, 10-15 minutes. Teff, 10-15 minutes. Amaranth, 10-15 minutes. So, not every grain is quick cooking. The jade pearl rice takes about 20 minutes, and in gluten-free recipes for the conscious cook, I even have an eco tip for cooking grains that are that quick cooking. Just bring them to a boil and turn them off, and let the residual heat cook them.
That's how I cook my rice, because otherwise I tend to burn it. So it seems to be a really good way to cook it. So what? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when I first started cooking brown rice in a pressure cooker back in the late 70s, I spent more time cleaning out the pressure cooker than actually enjoying the rice. And
Right.
then I got a ceramic pressure cooker insert and cooked the rice in that ceramic crock and never burnt the rice or anything else I cooked in the pressure cooker ever again. So that's a wonderful way to also get a nice earthy flavor out of the foods, too.
Good idea. So what inspired you to write your cookbook? And
Well,
yeah, because you're not gluten-free. I was reading in your book,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Uh-huh.
I somehow developed an expertise in gluten-free cooking and baking, and way back in the late 70s when I started eating whole grains, because the only whole grain I grew up with was kasha.
Me too.
Otherwise,
Right.
I grew up on lots of white bread and spent
Uh-huh.
way too much time being constipated. And so in the late 70s, when I was just following my bliss and traveling and meeting people and exploring the different foods that people would invite me into their homes, and started eating rice and millet. And back in the late 80s, I was introduced to a grain called teff and just fell in love with at the first bite.
What is teff exactly?
Teff is a grain. It's an ancient grain. More people are familiar with ancient grains like quinoa and amaranth, and teff is a very, very tiny grain, and I think of it as a super grain, as all the gluten-free grains are. A cup of teff is about 80% iron and 32% calcium.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so I kind of sailed through menopause eating a nice diet with a lot of teff and a lot of sea vegetables and a lot of whole foods. And basically, teff has a hazelnut, chocolate, molasses-like flavor that hooked me immediately.
Sounds yummy. And
just cooked in water, I was like, yeah, I got to eat this. I loved it, and my kids loved it growing up.
And where can you buy it? Because I haven't seen it around.
Yeah, a lot of times my cookbooks have recipes with teff, and then people go, I need teff, how can I get it? So one way that you can get it into your natural food supermarkets if they don't have it is ask. That is a great way. You can also get it online. I know bobsredmill.com and shilohfarms.com. They sell teff and teff flour as well as the teff company. So you can go teffcompany.com. And I've seen teff around, not quite as regularly as the other whole grains, but it is definitely worth asking. And I know that, my family often prefers like a pie crust with teff flour over wheat, or pancakes or waffles over wheat using teff, or any of the other gluten-free grains because they're so tasty.
Interesting. So you would
nice to have the variety.
You would use teff alone. You wouldn't mix it, let's say, in a pie crust or in pancakes or waffles. You would just, and it tastes fine?
I like it.
And
any time I teach all over the country and use recipes with the teff flour, people are like, oh my gosh, the teff peanut butter chocolate chip cookies or the teff pie crust. They're very, very simple. You basically mix it up with some oil and maple syrup, a little bit of unrefined sea salt and teff flour, and press it into a pie crust. It's easy to use and easy to love. Again, a chocolate, a mild, subtle chocolate flavor goes really well with just about every fruit under the sun, as well as chocolate.
That's true. That's interesting. So if you're just joining us, I'm speaking with the gluten-free chef and author Leslie Cerier on Your Supernatural Life here on Green 960. So tell us, do you have some favorite gluten-free recipes that you could share?
Yes. One of my favorites from gluten-free recipes for the conscious cook is the hazelnut brownies with chocolate chips.
Sounds yummy.
And that I'm using finely ground raw hazelnuts. And you can also get, buy hazelnut flour. And then I'm using cocoa powder and a little bit of brown rice flour and a little bit of coconut flour. So we've got a bunch of yummy flavors coming in from coconut and cocoa and some vanilla extract, maple syrup, coconut oil. And that, hands down, has been a favorite recipe of very finicky critics, including my family.
Uh-huh.
They're always quick to tell me, nah, I don't like that, and
Oh.
they love this one,
Huh.
and
That sounds.
teenagers have loved it,
Uh-huh.
and I love it. It's um, and it's really fun. You know, I love chocolate and cacao, and so I really that's one of my favorites. You know, the cinnamon banana pancakes, again with the teff flour, is something I really, really love. Lemon poppy seed cake is really nice, and again, I'm using a ground nut flour, like almond flour, with a little bit of brown rice flour. So it's really easy to love whole foods
Yes.
and not feel deprived when you're eating gluten-free. So I like pancakes, cookies. I've got a maple sugar cookie recipe in the book.
Uh-huh.
Some of my other favorite recipes are like making vegetarian sushi with all the different rices that I mentioned.
Oh, interesting. You know,
Yeah,
I've been substituting just quinoa flour for white flour, and that seems to work. I make pancakes with that, and it's delicious.
absolutely. I like sometimes mixing quinoa flour with a little corn flour.
Mm-hmm.
And this time of year, because I'm in New England, I'm making like blueberry corn pancakes.
Oh.
Sometimes all corn flour, sometimes a little quinoa corn.